I'm not going to listen. Okay, and I'm also going to mute everyone, but you can unmute when you want to share something, quite obviously. So I want to welcome folks to the, well, really, it's the first Mordechai Kaplan Center webinar of the new year, if you count Elul as beginning the new year.
Yes.
And we're very excited to be doing this in a different format as a book club, and say a few words about how that will work in a moment. But there are standard introductions that I'm obligated to do. Jeffrey Schein. I'm the executive director of the Mordechai Kaplan Center, joined now by Mel Scult, our vice president, and by Jane Suswine, our president. And boy, more Kol Halev folks, so great. And I do want to remind you that you're being recorded. The purpose of that is so we can share this with other people who have strong interests but couldn't make the time. And by being on this, you're saying that's okay. And if you're shy about your punim, you'll take yourself off your visual screen. But we like seeing your punims, and we're certainly delighted that you're with us. We also like to remind people before we begin a webinar that the Kaplan Center is a trans-denominational movement dedicated to exploring the thought of Mordechai Kaplan, particularly its implications for 21st century Jewish living. So while many of you have connections to the Kaplan Center by dint of being connected to Reconstructing Judaism, that isn't true of everyone. We have Kaplanians who we welcome who come from Reform, Conservative, Neo-Orthodox, all sorts of orientations, and they are truly, truly welcome. Our minhag for webinars, as it's evolved over the years, we try to be very careful about time in the following way. We end in an hour and a half. We realize some people need to come and go, but most folks stay for that hour and a half. And it's during that time that we have our major exchanges. But we don't kick anyone off at, it would be 1:30 Eastern time. We keep it open for other comments and for continuing the dialogue. And a couple new features of this session, this webinar, is one, we're going to be putting on our website an opportunity, because some of these insights take a while to sink in. I'll show it to you at the end, a place where you can go later today, a week from now, when these ideas take root and connect to other experiences, and you can share those reflections and questions. Very good thing. And it's a Shechianu moment. It's a moment to praise something new. For the first time, at least as in the year and a half I've been doing webinars, we're going to do breakout rooms, and we're going to give you an opportunity to be with a smaller group of people and share some of your thoughts that way for 10 to 15 minutes about midway through the webinar. And we hope that will be a meaningful addition to what we do, and we welcome your comments around that as well. I am joined for this webinar by my wife, Dr. Deborah Schein, sitting right here. We're both enthusiasts about the book, and we thought that it might be important to begin by doing two things. One is, there's a wide range of comments we're sure this is eliciting. It's the nature of the book. It's as broad as the number of metaphors that help you connect to the divine, and probably broader than that. So it feels like it would be helpful to hear Toba's initial voice in framing the challenge, recognize that it's a challenge that connects us all, and then we will move on to the invitation that some of you saw to come to the book club with a short passage that, if you chose, that you found particularly moving and important. It's important because we continue then to hear Toba's voice. We want to give ourselves a chance to use our own voices and connect and clarify our thinking, but we also want to be touched by the poetry and prose of this remarkable author.
It's also a way for them to introduce themselves to the community right now who are learning together.
That's true. And it's a meaningful prelude to September 13th for many of you, we hope, to join Toba and the webinar that will be with her. So I'm reading now from the introduction to the book, the first several pages. Let's say you walk into a restaurant that you've heard a lot about. You're looking for something to satisfy your hunger and give you strength to get through the day. The waiter hands you the menu and you sit back, scanning all the sections: salad, soup, lunch, dinner. You begin to realize, sadly, that nothing on the menu looks particularly appetizing. The choices sound bland, unsatisfying, or just strange. Much of the menu is incomprehensible. Resigned, maybe even a little bit angry, you put the menu down and leave. You convince yourself that you're not so hungry after all, and you head into your day. She then talks a bit about our lives and the way in which we need to have responses to the big questions of who we are, where we come from, what's the destiny of our soul, et cetera, et cetera. And then she offers this paragraph about why traditional religions often don't help us satisfy our spiritual appetite. So she writes, for those of us raised in the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions, that power is called in English God. While the stories about God and what it means to serve God differ greatly in the Abrahamic religions, there is a cluster of ideas that for most people define what God is. Very big and awesome, ultimate power over us, a force for ultimate good. And even though the religions differ greatly on how explicit we can be about God's human-like qualities, most people who talk about God use very human language to describe what God does and God is. God knows, God acts, God loves, God judges, God gives and takes away life. No one would use those verbs to describe a river or an electrical current or a hurricane. So somewhere in the back of our minds, whether we explicitly believe it or not, God is a big person who knows everything and can do anything God wants. So there's our challenge. I think it connects all of us. And I'm wondering if anyone at this point has a favorite selection from the book. I tried to coach you that should be more than a word, but less than a paragraph, that captures for you its meaning for you, why the book is important. So we'll give you a couple minutes now, if you have such one or you think it's nearby, to grab hold of it. And in a few minutes, I will come back and invite people to share that. It's not obligatory sharing. It's whether this can help all of us connect to what the book meant to you. And while that's going on, I'm going to put in the chat room my email address in case you have comments and you're not comfortable with the chat room. But we encourage you, if you are, to put your comments there. And I'm also going to put the link to our website, because at the end of our time together, we'll invite you to think about going to the website for further comments and questions. So I'm going to the chat room and I will be back in a moment. will think about my hands, but don't quite control my hands, please. Okay. No, I'm muted. Okay, I'm going to come back now. Okay. Okay. Deb and I would like to invite you to, if you choose, unmute. We know some people haven't read the book or read it a while ago. You're still part of the conversation. But if you have and you would like to share a selection that was particularly powerful and important for you, please unmute. Might be helpful since some of us have the book handy to tell us what page you might be reading from, and let us have the pleasure of hearing your voice channeling Toba's voice.
Someone want to start?
All right,
Happy?
I will. Okay, go on, Happy. No,
Happy, and then Jane.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking on page 220, the last paragraph. And this is from the chapter on becoming. If God is the ultimate potentiality of all potentialities, then change is godly. Perfection does not lie in achieving some final state of completeness. In fact, such a state is impossible. Change, development, evolution are not just natural aspects of material reality. They are its most godly aspects. And as I take that as good coaching for me, because I have trouble with change.
Thank you, Happy, so much. Jane, would you like to add to that and share a selection?
Yes, I'm not sure actually. After I read the book, I took James Geary's book on metaphor, I as metaphor, out of the library. And I'm not sure whether the insight came from his book or from Toba's, but there's the idea of metaphor as a volcano with extinct, active, and dormant. And as I say, I don't know. I'm not sure whether I've been looking it through the book. I don't see it in Toba's book, but it was very instructive that like understand and see. Like I see that meaning understand I think that's an extinct because we use it so without thinking really. I mean, we understand that I'm sorry I can't be more explicit, but that the notion of three stages and three kinds of metaphors I found was very instructive.
Yeah, and I wonder, Jane, whether Toba is coaching us in all sorts of ways in terms of practice and thought to move from silent to active uses of metaphor that help us channel the divine.
Interesting.
Anyone else have a favorite selection that they would like to share? Barb, Truett?
I have two that I will share because I really can't decide between the two of them. 101.
Okay.
One of the reasons I like this book is that it's challenged some of my, it's challenged me to think and rethink. And in this one, it's the sense of hearing is not the only sense that can do this, and that is hearing something. Touch can also do this too. For some reason, we tend to make a distinction between hearing a sound and feeling a vibration. In reality, they are the same thing. And that was in response to, how is it? I think it was in response to whether or not a deaf person can hear. And then the other is in the chapter Rock of My Heart. I am somebody like Toba. Everywhere I go, I pick up rocks. and come back down because I have too many that I have no idea where they came from. And I know where they came from, but I have rocks in every room of my house. When we pick up a rock, we are not just
Can you say what page it is, Barb?
130, page
Okay.
130. When we pick up a rock, we are not just holding a lump of minerals. We are holding a piece of eternity in our hands. And that is just awesome.
Yes.
Wow. And concise
Yeah.
and powerful.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Today in our newspaper, they found the oldest rock from Minneapolis. The oldest rock in the world is
Minnesota.
in Minnesota.
Right. I see our friend Meryl, I think, has a selection to share.
Well, it's not a selection. Actually, it's the overarching principle of the book that when we encounter God in different places, different times, different moods of our hearts, and we have we have a need for all these different entry points because there isn't one that just would cover everything. And so I like that she even embarked on this project. But the one that specifically has been speaking to me lately is God as water, because one of the stories she gives is being carried along a river, right? So the water can be outside of you, right, and carry you along. But the water, we also need water internally to sustain life. And so it's a metaphor that works both externally and internally.
Thank you,
Lovely.
Meryl. Very lovely.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I believe Deborah has one.
I do have one. It's on page 215, and it came just before Happy's. And it's just a little quote. It says, "All living beings are a succession of drops of experiences." So we are like, that just blows my mind. Like, we are not concrete, but just a whole conglomerate of experiences because we're constantly changing every moment.
Right. And I know that in the September 13th webinar, because I've talked with Tova about this, she'll be saying quite a bit about the new neuroscience and how it links to the fact that we are drops of experience and we need God to help interpret. Mel, I see your hand raised.
Well, of course, I see Kaplan, not wherever I look, but in many places. I want to go back to the matter of potential, because that is such an important Kaplanian idea in terms of the self, in terms of the meaning of life. Kaplan, when he had his first grandchild, talked of the baby as 7 pounds of potential, which I think was a lovely kind of way. Well, I want to say something about my own synagogue and our Torah study, which I attend regularly and which I find, unfortunately, is on a rather low level. What I mean to say, it's on the level of pshat, the simplest kind. And what I'm struck by with Tova's book is how she moves back and forth from that level to the higher level of conceptualization. And that is very, very moving to me. And I would like to say that every member of our Torah study group should be required to read this book. In terms of specific passages, I'm struck by the passages on becoming and on change, because I think that's the hardest thing for us to embrace. We continually think about God as an entity or as a concept which is rather stable in some kind of way. So I think the whole idea of becoming, Kaplan talks about growth as the essence of life, and the other side of growth without us is the matter of becoming. So I see that as very Kaplanian, and I see Tova as very helpful in this regard.
Great. Well, these are a great set of preliminary comments. Meryl and Mel, I'll ask you to take your hands down unless, Meryl, you were indicating that you wanted to follow up. Thank you. And I want to say one thing, and then I will turn it over to Deb for the next aspect of our exploration. A little later, we will have a chance to explore those particular metaphors, but Deb is going to take us into an exploration of the nature of metaphor. I do want to say that in terms of this book being related to practice in reconstructing Judaism congregations, Topa said something I'm still trying to absorb. I hope she'll say more on September 13th. She said, Kol HaNeshama does a great job through the Shemot, through the various names of God, of indicating the rich palette of metaphors that might guide us. But in her mind, and I'm still thinking about this, that drops out rather quickly. You start with a great metaphor, and then the language becomes somewhat monochromatic as you move through the prayer, and doesn't fully employ the power of the metaphor. And boy, this will date me into the 80s or 90s. That blows my mind, or 60s. It's really so, I think, so evocative of thought and so challenging. So among the many things I've gained from preparing for this book club is that insight from my conversation with Tova. I'm going to turn it over to Deborah now, Deb, who's going to share some things with us about metaphor.
Yeah, so we thought it would be important to look at the word metaphor and sort of analyze its meaning. So I went to the dictionary and I found this dictionary definition. A metaphor is a figure of speech where a word or phrase is used to describe one kind of object or action in place of another. This suggests a likeness or analogy between them. And then they gave an example. For instance, like when we say to a person, you're a peach, which suggests that the person is pleasing or delightful. In our case today, we're looking at Judaism. So we might say Torah is a tree of life, or the land of Israel is the land of milk and honey. Those would be good metaphors. A metaphor can also imply comparison, like the silk of a singer's voice. And this is really, I think, so deeply important in our looking at metaphors, that when we use metaphor, we make a leap between the rational, beyond the rational or the ho-hum comparison, to identification or fusion of two objects. So it results in two entities that are characteristic of both. So the voice, like silk, it becomes the voice is silk. So it's a blending of the two. Many critics regard the making of metaphor as a system of thoughts predating or bypassing logic. Metaphor is the fundamental language of poetry and common on all levels of literacy, thought, and communication, and found in all kinds of language in all cultures throughout the world. Toba adds to our understanding and use of metaphor in her book, God is Here. In the first chapter, she speaks about the nature of metaphors and how they work in helping us better understand nature and the divine world. A metaphor can simultaneously speak to something within and beyond ourselves. Somebody mentioned that earlier. Metaphor invites people into a conversation about spirituality, especially true for those who are not religious or who do not see God as father or man, but instead see God as a process or energy force. Gives us many, many words. Metaphor requires imagination. And then Tobit says, she asks, so is it true that God exists? Yes, she says, in the same way that time and love and color exist. They all involve interaction with our body, our brain, or action, and yet they are untouchable except through our use of imagination and metaphor. Metaphor requires that a kind of imagination used during biblical times that was capable of opening people up so that they might see beyond themselves, yet grounding them in very real human experiences. The word God has more than 31 metaphors and many more, many more, because any given metaphor will highlight only one aspect or concept and hide others. That's on page 32 and 33 if you want to go back and look at that idea. With this understanding of metaphor for spirituality and God, Tobit explores metaphors of God, water, place, listening, heart, cloud, fire, becoming, and the material world. We exist in a universe that is largely, even today, beyond our understanding. And these forces provide light, darkness, make peace, create destruction, all one power source of the universe, which simultaneously sustains us and makes us mortal. Blessings connect us spiritually by connecting our energy flow of physical experience to sacred process that enables us to live and thrive. So what does this all mean to be a process, and how far does it get us? It's important to remember that metaphor does not define something that is. Instead, it gives us access to an experience, a way to think about it, to talk about it, act on it. New metaphors have the power to create new realities, not an exact quote from this thing, but it's, I think, important. And if we want our spiritual lives to be wholesome, to promote deeper understanding and right action, then the metaphors we use to think and talk about the realm of sacred are very critical. And that's why I think this book is really valuable.
Do you want to add some comments?
Yeah, anybody have comments on, I want to add to this definition of metaphor. I know, Jane, you put in the volcano, that was great. Sure.
I'm wondering about the intersection of the discussion of metaphor with Schulweiss's predicate theology, that turning the phrase around so that that fire is godly insofar as it can destroy, it can create, whatever. It just occurred to me, but I'm wondering if that enriches the discussion at all.
Definitely. I think you're going to talk about that
Yeah,
later. Yeah,
I will say a word about later, but it certainly does, because Schulweiss encourages us not to think of Elohim as subject, God as a noun, but Elohut, the predicates that we experience of God in the world.
like godlike.
God-like, compassion, justice. Whenever we experience those things, we make a metaphor real, and we also access the divine. So it's a great insight, Jane. Thank you. If there's no other comment right now, we're going to do a playful thing. I am going to launch a poll and see what the Kahal thinks in terms of, if you were pressed, and I'm pressing you, to choose from the palette that Toba has given us of 7 metaphors. You only get one choice here, but we're curious to see what the Kahal thinks, whether there's one metaphor that seems to grab people, another that doesn't. So vote once. This is not the Chicago invitation to vote often, because the machine won't let you do that. Just vote once for your favorite metaphor, and I'll share those results in a minute.
Do you want to vote too?
We can't.
Oh.
This initiator of the poll
Okay.
can. Okay. We'll give you another minute and then I'll share the results so you can see it.
Wow, it's so interesting.
Okay, Mel, I think you have to write another book.
Oh, look, Rock didn't get any.
No lobbying. Okay, anyone need another moment? Okay, so if I publish this or share results, what are you noticing? What would you like to say about how we distributed ourselves around the 7 metaphors? Just unmute and share your comment. I'm going to leave the screen up.
Very congruent with Reconstructionist thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And the congruence you find comes.
Becoming, it's one of the B's from Camp Havaya.
Yeah, right. There you go. The 4 B's. Yeah. Okay. Deb, you were surprised because you also spend time with Rock, as Meryl does. Would you have voted for Rock?
I didn't vote for, I wouldn't have not have voted for Rock, but I'm surprised that nobody did. Because I do love Rocks.
And anyone else struck by this pattern or any piece of it? Barb?
Would it be different if we could choose 2 metaphors?
Of course.
Good
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It probably would. We are eclectic by nature, and that's a sign of postmodernity, and no single metaphor does, because our circumstances and life change. So if we're doing a fuller poll, we might have asked which metaphor works when you are in distress, which metaphor works when you're at a simcha. That's a really important point. Anyone else have a comment? Pat, welcome, and let's hear your.
I have always felt that the metaphor of place is particularly powerful. I think it constitutes a bridge between pre-Israelite religion and Israelite religion in thinking of places where God dwells and what that means. I think it could be particularly productive. The ancients had the idea that there was a place which was the center of the universe. And I think about that and what would be the center of my universe if I were to choose that metaphor for the place where the divine dwells. And I think I would pick the New York Public Library at 42nd Street.
No, I thought you were going to say Yerushalayim. That's so great. Okay, I see comments.
It's so, I'm glad he's not here because he always gets embarrassed when I refer to this. But the librarian, the head librarian of the Jewish collection is a member of our congregation. His name is Leonard Gold, and it's one of the largest Jewish collections of books in the world, and he was head of it, and he is a member of our Reconstructionist congregation.
Thank you, Mel. I collect actually in a folder places where people experience godliness, both when and where. And I have to add now the library because it never has been mentioned before, but it seems so obvious. I'd like to call on Marcia and then Pat. And it looks like Barbara might have a comment as well. So let's go Marcia, Pat, Barbara.
So this might be unfair, but I chose makom, I chose place, only because I've always been very moved when one uses hamakom yinachem, however it's used in traditional liturgy. But I think because in every makom there are rocks there is water, there is fire, potentially. And so all these things that definitely hold meaning also are found in makom, in place.
Great. Thank you, Marcia. So interesting.
Really nice.
Pat, and then Steve. Pat, would you like to unmute and share with us?
The one that got the most votes is Becoming, and I think you could fairly say that's the most abstract. That's what I voted for, but looking at the choices, that's usually what I vote for, but that is the notion that prevailed. That's all.
That's a very important observation. Interesting. Rabbi Steve Seeger. Steve?
Yeah, I appreciate that Pat said that, because I was going to make a similar comment. And having listened to Toba talk about the book and the ideas that led to it in a couple of different contexts, she talks about abstract. It's interesting. I mean, I also picked Becoming. I have to say, what immediately comes to mind is the revelation of God to Moses, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, in Exodus, and that being the one. I will be what I will be, and that is a really. It's always been for me a very inspiring way of thinking about divinity. But Toba has talked about the overemphasis on abstraction in kind of modern and even some pre-modern approaches to thinking about divinity. And I think one of the things she's trying to do with this book is reclaim more concrete ways of accessing a connection to divinity, which I think is it's trying to turn the tide from the general thrust of modernity. And I feel like the Reconstructionist movement is kind of at the extreme end of that sense of abstraction. And so anyway, this is a long way of saying it wasn't surprising to me at all that Becoming was the most popular choice. And I think it's going to take practice, because I think we have many of us have built-in resistance to opening up to a sense of divinity in a more concrete context. So that's my comment.
Great. It's been a very rich discussion, and we want to give you a chance to go into greater depth, share a little bit more of how you connect with it. We're going to go into breakout rooms. So if the technology works properly, you should have a sign that says, please accept the invitation. You'll be in groups of 3 or 4. If your picture, you might want to share your picture if doing so in a smaller group is comfortable, but if you go in with just your voice, that will work too. And we'd like to give you a chance to say more about the book or any of these insights that have struck you as particularly important.
Or what you're thinking.
And what you're thinking, what you had been thinking before this started, what you're thinking now. And we'll give you probably 12 to 15 minutes to explore it in the smaller group. And then I'll bring you back and I'll have some things to say, I'm sure others will add, about Toba's book in a Kaplanian context. So welcome to your breakout rooms. I'm going to create 4 of them. 3, 4. You're going to be assigned automatically.
But they have to click to go in.
As we said, you'll have to accept. Please accept and please enjoy your time in a smaller group.
Room 3.
Yeah, we are.
How do I find it?
Barbara, you have it.
Okay.
We see you.
Okay, I want you to know that I am having a very, very, very reconstructionist experience from this word becoming, where I noticed I was the first to mark it, and you didn't have an opportunity to respond to my raised hand. But this is the first time in ages that I have felt the core of the majesty of being alive and being able to observe consciously or unconsciously so often what God is to me and for me. And I'm just so appreciative of this. You know, there was a woman in my former congregation who used to say that she knew she was in synagogue when she saw Barbara Stark crying, and that I am in crying today because of this particular offer of becoming has defined so much for me that I thank you. And I think from now on, today and in the meeting, I better be a listener. Thank you for today.
Oh my goodness.
Barbara, that is very,
Really heartfelt.
very moving.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is? Was it just the word becoming that brought you back to the core of your connection?
Well, yes, because I can't say, please, dear God, anymore for the last million years of my life. And I'm always looking for what. And so I usually say, may it be. But you know, I was remembering a story where I would tell from time to time, where I was hiking with my twin brother, and he was hiking and he was way ahead of me. And he said, come on, sis. And I said, Arthur. He said, come on, sis, I'm hiking. And I said, Arthur. And I'm looking at a mushroom. Come here. And I think in my heart, that says it all, because becoming is always requiring personal attention, either before, during, or after whatever it is that made one become. But I'm sitting at my window on an avenue in New York City, and there are trees, and I'm picturing what happens when each one moves, and how it moves. And then I'm thinking of the gift of my life of being able to see, to feel, to know, to question. And this is the opportunity that today is giving me, but this is the opportunity that being a sentient Jewish woman allows me.
All right. Maybe you go first.
Well, before Jeff's questions, I just want to respond that for me, my interpretation of what you're sharing is that you're talking about a spiritualness in your life that is, you don't even need God talk for it. It's just a spiritualness in your life. So my work is in spiritual development, and I see spirituality as something like we're each born with a disposition, and we fill it with joy and wonder and imagination that is awoken by our senses. Like our senses touch the world, the outside world, and it brings everything in. And that's sort of what you're describing to me. That's how I'm interpreting what you're telling us. So like an openness of your senses, that filling your disposition and giving you language to articulate how you're feeling, which then is like what's his name? No, that creates the bridge to God, to godliness. So anyway, now your questions.
So I had the pleasure, Deb doesn't know this, of meeting Barbara some 20 years ago when I was, are you hearing us, Barbara? You okay?
Uh-oh.
I think she's having trouble. Barbara, you still there?
We'll talk, just talk.
Yeah. So maybe you're hearing. When I was compiling Connecting Prayer and Spirituality for the Reconstructionist movement, Barbara, you had an essay that we placed in the adult learning section about.
Is that, are we done?
No, I hope not. Okay, Barbara didn't accept, which is why she was there. So I'm going to close all rooms in a minute.
Will they close automatically?
No, you have to give them a time.
Oh, you did.
Or, yeah, no, I didn't know how.
Okay. Do you want to give them a warning?
No, yeah. It's. So we're going to give you another 2 minutes to share, and then I'll bring you back, all of us together. So one of the downsides of breakout rooms is it gives people an invitation to leave, because we really, it's pretty remarkable. We all 17 people stayed in the beginning. Usually people. So anyway.
Are there comments there?
No, just the one.
Oh, what was it?
It was my putting the website.
Okay.
Oh, no, the second one. Haven't read the book, but wanted to hear reactions. That's fine.
Who was that?
That was Gail.
Okay.
I'll ask Barbara if she wants to share that, since we missed her.
Okay.
Anyway, she wrote an essay, and so 20 years ago,
Do you want to be? So
very
cool.
powerful.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, it's been about 10, 12 minutes.
I think we're going to go the whole time.
That's okay. Close all rooms. We return to the main session in 60 seconds. Well, that's perfect. It worked, I think.
See. Where's everybody?
It takes, they don't come back for 60 seconds. Then.
Isn't that 60 seconds?
No, that was like 15 seconds, and then they come back slowly. You know, you'll see different faces coming back.
But it only has.
It's only us, because we're the only ones there. Trust me, other people will come back.
Okay. You don't have to do anything?
No, you have to end the breakout rooms. Now you have me dialing.
Yeah.
Yeah, here they come.
Welcome back.
Here we are. So
We didn't
hope
get to
people
finish
will-
the conversation, but got to talking about the different conceptions of God that characters, particularly women in the Bible, had. And it might be interesting to, and I certainly don't know enough to draw this out, but to relate the conceptions of God with their character.
Okay.
That would be fun.
That would be very valuable. Anyone else want to share something that came up that in your breakout room that you'd like to share with the whole group? Just unmute yourself and share, please.
Well, I raised the matter of speech as a metaphor and as a challenge to what does it mean to say God speaks. And I think it was Mark. He's not on the screen. I don't see him.
There he is.
Yeah.
He's here.
There he is, waving to you. Go ahead. No, Mark's with you.
Raise the issue of dogma, which is very much related to the matter of being ordered. And I raised the insight of Eric Fromm, who talks about the limitations of authoritarian religion and proposes what he calls humanistic religion. And I think as Reconstructionists, we have to be more sensitive to the limitations of the Torah in its authoritarianism. So,
thanks, Mel. There is someone, Meryl, please.
Yeah, I wanted to think more about what Steve said in our breakout room, and he can correct me if I've got it wrong, but that we use metaphor, so we work through metaphor, but the metaphor also works through us or works on us, is an idea from her book, and that takes some time to actually understand and relate to that. We think we're in control of our language and that we're just not often. And we're unaware of the metaphors that we use constantly. So if I were going to share this with a congregation or even a book group, that I think we would need at least some time to digest this whole idea of how metaphor, what part metaphor plays in our lives before even entering into how God metaphor works.
Sure, absolutely. Barbara?
There was an episode of Star Trek where they landed on a planet where they spoke in metaphors. And so they would say things like Apollo, Zeus, Sarah. And you had to understand what each of those metaphors meant, which meant it was very difficult to learn their language because you had to understand the metaphors, which is what I like about this book, is she explains the metaphors so very well.
And impressively gives you ways to keep acting on them in your practice. I found that an amazing part of the book. I want to build on Meryl's comment that it takes time for it to seep in and for its meaning to register with us. Unfortunately, we lost Barbara Stark, I think for technology reasons. But Barbara is a member, I think, of West End Synagogue. She's been involved for a good deal of time. And I actually remember her writing an essay that was part of a volume that JRF published and I edited in 1996 called Connecting God and Spirituality. And it was a study of Kol HaNeshama. And she talked about the evolution of her spirituality. And now, some 30 years later, she talked in very moving ways of it still being with her, and actually this very platform and the word becoming having a deep, powerful effect and bringing her back into touch with God. And thank you, Steve, for telling me Barbara still is on the call. Did I get that right, Barbara? Could you unmute? Because I missed you the first time around.
You have to unmute.
You have to unmute, Barbara.
There's a little button.
Barbara, you need to unmute. You need to push your button that's down here.
The little microphone.
Here.
Now,
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. I guess I would say yes, but I must correct you. I no longer belong to West End Synagogue for the last 5-6 years. But it certainly was a turning point for me.
Right.
But
And as a member of West End Synagogue, we miss you. We miss you, Barbara. We miss your intelligence. We need your intelligence.
I know that too. Barbara, do you want to share what you were going to share when we didn't catch you the first time around that Deb and I heard? I think it's valuable for other people to hear it.
What did I don't understand.
About you shared with Deb and I in our breakout room the power of seeing that phrase becoming and what it meant to you in terms of your connection to God.
Oh, well, in a sense, it validates, it leads me to an understanding of God, I think, because I don't know how to say this, Jeffrey, but I think one of the things I said was I used to start my prayers with, please, dear God. And then I've sort of arrived at, may it be. But there is a power in becoming, because it keeps me alive to know, to be able to experience sometimes that which is unknowable seems to become so easily known to me as I think of it. And I don't know what else to say except that it's these discussions, this availability of Reconstructionism connects me to a way of being that that gives me that validates me and makes me more knowing of myself and of the world I live in, and of others who are foreign to me in terms of what I would want people to be. You get it. I just love being.
Very powerful.
When Barbara was sharing with us, what came to my mind was this concept of filling our spiritualness or our spiritual inner self, our inner disposition, with those moments of wonder, awe, and joy. And metaphor plays an important role here because it sort of the link between what's outside and what's inside. So it gives language for that internal connection.
I would love to know the Greek meaning of metaphor.
Someone Google it, please. You don't have to wait for the Messiah to come.
I'll do it.
It has a connection to being a truck, to moving across from one level of understanding to another level of understanding. And I have been told that in Greece, I don't read Greek, you might see a truck with a very similar word on its side.
Wow.
Wow, that's really
Well, that
cool.
unites the material and
that's-
spiritual worlds. That is
Oh,
pretty
that's-
amazing.
Well, Jake Bronowski says that, we have moved ahead because we're able to use our experiences become our knowledge. And well, anyway, thanks for that explanation.
Well, and thanks for sharing that, Barbara. That was very personal. I want to say a word and then go on to putting this in some Kaplanian context. I'm sure folks like Mel and Meryl and Steve will add to this. But my word is a word of validation. Thank you, Meryl and others. I have thought with all the excellence that we project in the Kaplan Center, the depth and the sophistication of our learnings, our offerings, our webinars, our books, that we don't leave enough time for it to be an iterative process. That we have a great webinar, people make some comments, we leave a half hour of space. But actually, this Elul journey of ours was constructed to give people more opportunity to be iterative and to visit and revisit, as in read the book, have the discussion, come back September 13th to hear from Toba, visit our website, which I'll take you to when we end, and share another comment and reflection with us. So I believe that's the nature of us as human beings and as adult learners. And I'm glad that in some way we're providing a better platform for that through this Elul set of offerings. So here's what I would like to say about Kaplan and where Toba sits in a line of innovations that bring us to God is here in metaphor. I want you to go back in time 100 years and imagine the world of Mordecai Kaplan and be appreciative that the things that Toba presents, and actually Nancy Fuchs Kramer does this in her review essay, as blocking our ability to experience the divine, it's a relative construction. Because 100 years ago, it was al achat kama v'kama, all the more so. Kaplan's living in a universe where the dichotomies of religious and secular are very, very strong, and the opportunities for new languages to discover God are constricted by orthodoxy. I think that's true. So part of Kaplan the Pioneer is to give us a new understanding of God. And he does so by breaking with a supernatural conception of God and replacing it with what's sometimes called a naturalistic, probably more appropriately a transnaturalistic, where God is moving through the universe. And he gives us a formulation for it that's lasted several decades. And that formulation, the initial formulation, is God is the process, not ourselves, that makes for salvation and justice in the world. Something beyond us, but the measure of that something beyond us is that it leads to pragmatic differences in the world. And I've wrestled with this definition a lot. I know it had currency and aligned him with people like Teilhard de Chardin, who was a preeminent cosmologist priest of the early 20th century, proposing other versions of transnaturalism. And so it had its intellectual function, but I could never wrap my mind around it. It is too big to envision for me process in those terms. I've also been thinking in the last day that metaphor gives us access to experience, and a process links those experiences together into a theology or a coherent philosophy. But if you haven't had the experiences, the linkage and the what I would call almost a super metaphor of God as process doesn't work for me and hasn't worked for other folks either. So I want to just mention a stream of people who had some connection to Kaplan who began to, and this is really building on Steve's point, who was building the Shem Tova, that we drive ourselves to distraction with abstraction. We need the concreteness of experience and metaphor. So one of them I'll mention, who's not a Reconstructionist, but certainly appreciated Kaplan, was Leonard Fine, Rabbi Leonard Fine, who was the founder of the Moment magazine, one of the co-founders of Mazon. And in the 70s, he talked a great deal about God as a verb. And that's worthy of independent study. But I think what he was trying to do is to say that we connected through God, much as we'd hear others like Schulweis do later, not through the nounness of God, not through an abstract consideration, but through God in the world and the way in which we do tikkun olam, make the world a better place. It's a non-Reconstructionist but Kaplanian voice. And then, of course, we have that dynamic duo of Harold Kushner and Harold Schulweis coming in with their attempts to give us a more concrete access to God. Schulweis calls his predicate theology, we mentioned it before. Ultimately, it's about Elahut, about godliness, and the predicates by which we know God in the universe. This isn't all new. There is a lovely midrash about you understand the Amidah and God as creator, healer, all the things he is, only through your own life and the way in which you embody those qualities. So everything that seems new actually has some echo in the past. And of course, we also get here Harold Kushner's important work around the key to theology is not why is God, not what is God, but when is God. It's been very important in uncovering approaches to use with God in children. And many of you have read When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And Kushner comes down then with that powerful, God is not in the experience of COVID. That's not the nature of God. God is in our response to COVID, our compassion, the way we mobilize science, the way we do that. And that's another anchoring in concreteness that's part of this tradition of, I won't quite call it arguing with Kaplan, but certainly building on Kaplan in terms of making the divine more present. Those Reconstructionists who engage in Kabbalah certainly have access to the Shemot, the names of God, and the Midot as a way of doing this. And in a way, I would say that Toba moves in that tradition, but even more powerfully in some ways because of her, as we'll hear on September 13th, as her deep read of the methodology of science, particularly neuroscience. Our colleague Eric Kaplan loves to say that, and others have said that for Kaplan, there are two truths. One is Torah, and one is the truth that comes through social science and other sciences. And of all those truths, psychology was Mel says this as well, psychology was Kaplan's favorite. So new advances in psychology tell us, we'll hear from Toba, that not only is metaphor a convention of language, but is the very way by which we experience the world. As Merrill said, not only do we access metaphors, but metaphors have accessed us and structure our experience. So I want to simply indicate that there's a tradition that goes on. I'll mention one more, the work of Rabbi Rebecca Alpert, which isn't as well known as Schulweis and Kushner or Leonard Fine.
But it was mentioned earlier.
Hmm?
but it was mentioned earlier.
Rebecca's work has not been mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead, it was.
Yeah. Was it? Someone mentioned Rebecca's?
Not her name, but her work, but the.
Okay, so if you're familiar with Rebecca's work, she calls it prepositional theology. And she suggests that it's not just the verbs, as Fine would have it, or the predicates, as Schulweis would. The key to understanding our relationship to God is to look at prepositions. So if you think of to as the primary preposition, then you're setting yourself up to think of God acting on us, or our acting on God. If you think of for as the preposition, then you're thinking of work in the universe on behalf of God, perhaps being God's partners in some way. And if you think of with as the key preposition, myself with God, then you move in a different direction. So these are all fruitful, multiple approaches to going beyond that place that Toba put us in the very beginning of our time together, when we opened the book and talked about being trapped in some ways by a supernatural conception of God. There have been many different attempts to open that up. Toba's being in that mainstream, and you'll hear again more about her on September 13th. I wonder if someone has a comment about this Reconstructionist tradition of constantly reconstructing and what that's been about in terms of God language.
Well, I can't not accept such an invitation.
We wouldn't want you to.
I just want to emphasize the importance of the self in our quest for the divine. In other words, we tend to think of Kaplan as a group person, which he was, of course, but the group is made up of individuals. And when I talk this way, people inevitably make the mistake of thinking that I am encouraging self-aggrandizement, that I am contributing to the problem of the way in which our selfishness dominates our culture, and so on and so forth. And that is exactly the opposite of what I want to say. But my reading for the past 20 or 30 years has impressed upon me the way in which the nature of the self preoccupied Kaplan. If one reads in the diary, he's much more thinking about that than he is thinking about group life. The self is the seat of our quest for completeness, of our quest for growth, of our desire to be the best that we can be. And that desire, which Kaplan calls the life abundant, that's a very important aspect of his idea. We don't want to just live and vegetate. We want to be more than that. And that more is a matter of being ethically and creatively the most that we can be. And that, I think, is the essence of Kaplan's theology, because it is that urge within ourselves, which Kaplan calls the divine. And it is not just within us, but the universe supports that idea. the idea of cosmic support, which I discovered many years ago, is a key notion with Kaplan. And so this is what I would add to what Jeffrey has outlined in terms of our quest for the divine. You're muted, Jeffrey.
Muted.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, I have to
Yeah,
follow my
there
own
we go.
instructions. I am now unmuted. As I now review Toba's book, the metaphors, the whole palette, whatever our favorite is, point us in the direction of self-actualization, self-realization, I think. And it makes me think about whether there's an equal kind of weight that we ought to give. Because I believe in balance. I believe in peoplehood, and I believe in the fruition of the human personality within that context. But to metaphors of peoplehood, I just, and tell me if I'm missing it. I've read the book twice, but I could have missed it. I see that wonderful attention to our experience of the divine. And I know this is also for a non-Jewish as well as a Jewish audience. So the talk about peoplehood would be excluding some. But it seems to me we could have a wonderful session trying to generate metaphors that explain our connection to the Jewish people as a kind of divine Kaplan balance of these two thrusts in his thinking. Anyway, that another insight that could only come to me because I've had 17 colleagues joining us, and so very, very rich. And I think what I want to do now is share my screen for one moment and take you to the Kaplan Center website, newly redesigned in so many different ways. Here we have some of Mel's new bibliography of Kaplanian thought. But what I really want to take you to, and Deb has reminded me not to move the cursor so fast, I'll make people dizzy, is here where there are here are all our upcoming webinars on the left. On the right, where you see Toba's Punim, her face, is the opportunity to register for September 13th if you haven't. And you will see later today, Deb and I's Punim appropriately disappear. We've done our thing, but there'll be an invitation to comment and keep thinking about the issues that have been raised today, because it's by new comments and new insights that we keep the dialogue growing. So I invite you to visit and revisit over the next several weeks and add your comments. Hope that I will see you on when we come to September 13th and other times before. I'm not kicking you off the webinar at this point, but it is 12:25. I hope it's been a meaningful hour and 20 minutes or so for you. If someone has concluding comments they'd like to make, we do have a few minutes. And I want to thank you on behalf of Jane and Mel and other members of the Kaplan Center for joining us and sharing your.
I'm still confused as to, is every congregation that we have in our database a member congregation? Or is that a different, right? So I don't even know how to tell which of the congregations on the list I would make are members or not.
Right, the only way I have to tell that is by the website. There's a link there.
Yep. That has not been updated for very much. Yep.
Jeff, you're muted again.
I was filling over the metaphor, the Greek definition of metaphor that someone has offered us. When we send you the link to and others to listen to the webinar, it should include these comments if you want to go back, and particularly this one about what the meaning of metaphor is. Any other, thank you to the people who said they've enjoyed and they've gotten something out. Any other comments in closing? Deb, do you have?
No, it's just nice to be with all of you.
If we are going to be holding focus groups about the Kaplan Center vision statement, and I hope that this is a wonderful group here, and I hope that you will be willing to participate in one of these.
Thank you. You'll actually get a link very soon to do a quick interaction with the vision of the Kaplan Center. But there'll be also opportunities that Jane and other board members will host for a longer discussion about a new vision that the board.
I do have a comment.
Go.
That as we were talking, this whole, I mean, goddess process has been a reconstructionist thought for a very long time. But Jeff, as you were talking about all these different ways of looking at God and connecting to metaphor, it just makes me want to dive deeper into that goddess process.
Mm-hmm.
Like a more detailed discussion.
Mel could direct you to some places to read about it.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to, again, thank people, wish you a Chodesh Tov, a good month of Elul full of tefillah, tshuva, tzedakah, return, recapturing your spirituality, doing good deeds in the world, good prayer. As you approach Rosh Hashanah, and hope to see you many times during 5783 at Kaplan Center events.
And thank you, Deb and Jeff. This was really wonderful.
Our pleasure.
See you on the 13th. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.